All right, so today we're diving into something I think a lot of us are already thinking about pretty much every day.
Yeah,
Coffee.
definitely.
Is it healthy? That's the question.
Yeah.
You sent in an interesting document
Right.
really diving into the science of coffee.
Hmm.
And I have to say, like, just even skimming through it, it seems like
Yeah,
there's potential benefits, AD risks.
for sure.
It's a bit of a conundrum.
It really is. Coffee's had this really interesting kind of back and forth history
Yeah.
of being touted as a health food and then also being demonized as well. So I'm happy to kind of break down the science for you today and we can kind of sift through some of that controversy.
Perfect, because I think we need that expert eye to help us sort through this.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we should start with, I guess, the elephant in the room, which is the whole cancer question.
Right.
You know, for years we've been hearing this kind of whisper campaign about coffee and cancer.
Yeah. Oh,
What's
yeah.
the real story?
So it's true that coffee was initially classified as a possible carcinogen back in 1991 by the World Health Organization.
Okay.
However, further research actually completely overturned that classification in 2016.
Okay, so no link between coffee and cancer. That's good news for a lot of people.
Well, it's not quite as simple as that.
Okay.
It's not that coffee causes or prevents cancer outright.
Okay.
But there are a number of studies actually that suggest that regular coffee drinkers may have a reduced risk of some types of cancer.
Wait, so coffee might actually protect us from cancer?
It's possible.
Okay, how does that work? What's the mechanism there?
There are a few things going on. First, coffee stimulates bile production and it speeds up digestion, particularly in the colon.
Okay.
So this means that any potential carcinogens are being flushed out faster,
Right.
so they spend less time in contact with the colon tissue.
So it's kind of like giving your colon like a quick cleaning.
Exactly.
Yeah, interesting. So it's all about keeping things moving.
Yeah.
What else is going on there?
So coffee also contains these really powerful antioxidants called polyphenols.
Oh, yeah. I always hear about antioxidants. I
Yes.
never really understood what they were.
So these basically work to neutralize harmful molecules in the body called free radicals.
Okay.
And free radicals can damage our cells' DNA and contribute to various health problems.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in the case of coffee, some studies, mostly done on animals, suggest that these polyphenols might actually inhibit the growth of cancer cells.
So it's fighting the good fight at a cellular level.
It seems to be.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got faster digestion. We've got these powerful antioxidants.
Huh.
Anything else that coffee has up its sleeve when it comes to fighting cancer?
Well, there's some early evidence suggesting that caffeine itself might hinder cancer cell growth and spread.
Okay.
And then on top of that, coffee has anti-inflammatory properties.
Okay.
And chronic inflammation is a known risk factor for many types of cancer.
Okay, so it sounds like the cancer scare with coffee is largely unfounded.
It seems that way.
In fact, it might actually be a tool to help prevent some cancer.
Potentially.
But I do remember there was something about a cancer warning on coffee in California.
Yes.
What was that all about?
So you're thinking about the acrylamide controversy that
Right.
happened back in 2018.
Yeah.
So California passed a law requiring cancer warnings on coffee due to this chemical that forms during the roasting process.
Acrylamide. I've never even heard of that. What is that?
It's actually present in a lot of foods that are cooked at high temperatures.
Okay.
So things like French fries, potato chips,
Oh, wow.
even bread.
Okay.
The U.S. National Toxicology Program classifies it as reasonably anticipated to be a human carcinogen
Oh.
based on studies in lab animals.
Mm-hmm.
However, and this is important,
Go on.
there's no evidence currently linking acrylamide in food to any health issues in humans.
Okay, so better safe than sorry.
Yeah, that's kind of how the California judge saw it.
Okay.
Coffee sellers had to display the warnings because they couldn't prove that acrylamide was safe in coffee. However, many cancer experts actually push back,
Really?
arguing that animal studies don't always translate to humans.
Yeah.
Because our metabolisms are different.
Yeah.
And they pointed out that coffee's overall benefits, the
Yeah.
antioxidants, the anti-inflammatory effects,
Right.
likely outweigh any theoretical risk from acrylamide.
So it sounds like the science is still out on that one.
Yeah, to a certain extent.
What happened with the warnings in the end?
So based on research that emerged following the ruling, California actually proposed exempting coffee from those warnings in 2018.
Okay, that's reassuring.
Yeah,
But what about coffee's effect on blood sugar?
right.
I know that caffeine can give you that burst of energy,
Yeah.
but doesn't that mess with your blood sugar levels?
So you're right, caffeine can cause a short-term spike in blood sugar.
Okay.
But here's the interesting thing. Long-term studies actually show that regular coffee drinkers tend to have a lower risk of developing type 2 diabetes compared to non-drinkers.
Really? So my daily coffee habit might be helping me avoid diabetes.
It's possible.
Wow, that's interesting. So how does that work?
It seems that the magic lies in those polyphenols again,
Okay.
along with minerals like magnesium,
Hmm.
which can improve insulin sensitivity and glucose metabolism.
So coffee's kind of helping your body regulate blood sugar.
Exactly. It's a team effort.
I like that. Are there any studies that back this up?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So one meta-analysis looked at over 45,000 people with type 2 diabetes,
Okay.
and they found a pretty clear correlation. The more coffee people drank, the lower their risk of diabetes.
Interesting.
We're talking an 8% reduction with just 1 cup a day.
Wow.
And it jumps to a 33% reduction with 6 cups a day.
That's pretty significant.
It is.
Okay, so it sounds like coffee could be a real tool in preventing diabetes.
Yeah, it seems that way.
Were there any other studies that found similar things?
Yeah, there was another meta-analysis, and this one focused on people without diabetes.
Huh?
And they found that those who drank the most coffee, up to 10 cups a day, had a 30% lower risk of developing type 2 diabetes compared to those who drank less than 1 cup.
Okay, so the evidence is really pointing in that direction.
It seems like it.
Coffee seems to be good for blood sugar control, and it can help reduce your risk of diabetes. But let's be honest, it can't all be good news.
Right.
What are some of the downsides to coffee?
Yeah, you're right. Like with anything, moderation is key. So
Yeah.
caffeine sensitivity is a real thing.
Yeah.
And it can lead to some pretty unpleasant side effects like stomach irritation, anxiety, jitteriness,
Oh, yeah.
even sleep disruption.
I know a lot of people who just can't have coffee after a certain time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's like a switch flips and they're up all night.
Exactly.
Yeah,
And for some people, high doses of caffeine can actually cause heart palpitations.
that's right.
So it's not for everybody. It's also important to mention that unfiltered coffee, like from a French press or Turkish coffee, contains compounds called déterpenes. Déterpenes. What are those?
So these can raise your bad cholesterol, your LDL cholesterol
Okay.
and triglycerides, which is ideal for heart health.
So maybe stick to filtered coffee.
Yeah, good news is that filtered coffee, like drip coffee
Okay.
and instant coffee,
Right.
contain almost no deproteins because they're removed during processing.
Okay, so a few things to keep in mind, like caffeine sensitivity
Yeah,
and those déterpenes in unfiltered coffee.
right.
But I'm sensing a theme here. It seems like coffee actually has some surprising health benefits.
It does.
What about its effect on our hearts?
So you're definitely picking up on something important
Okay.
because despite those potential downsides, the evidence suggests that regular coffee consumption might actually reduce your risk of heart disease and stroke.
Reduce your risk of heart disease.
Yeah.
But doesn't caffeine make your heart race?
It can in the short term,
Right.
but the long-term effects are quite different.
Okay.
So the Nurses' Health Study,
Mhm.
which followed a large group of women for many years,
Right.
found that those who drank 4 or more cups of coffee a day had a 20% lower risk of stroke compared to non-drinkers.
20% reduction in stroke risk. That's amazing.
It is.
Wow. Did that apply to all types of coffee?
So that's where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
They actually found a similar link with decaf coffee.
Really?
So women who drank 2 or more cups of decaf a day had an 11% lower risk of stroke.
So it's not just the caffeine that's giving us that benefit.
Exactly. It suggests that there are components beyond caffeine that are offering some protection.
Interesting. What other research supports these findings?
So another large study, this one focusing on women,
Okay.
found that moderate coffee consumption, so about 2-3 cups a day,
Okay.
was linked to a 21% reduced risk of heart disease.
Wow. So we're seeing a consistent trend here.
Mm-hmm.
It really seems like moderate coffee consumption is good for your heart.
It does.
Are there other studies that we can look at?
Yeah, so a meta-analysis of 21 studies found that drinking about 3 cups of coffee a day was associated with a 21% lower risk of death from cardiovascular disease
Wow.
compared to not drinking any coffee.
Okay, so the research is pretty clear.
Yeah,
Coffee seems to be heart healthy.
it seems that way.
What about our brains, though? Does coffee have any impact on our mental health?
Oh, absolutely. And this is an area where we're seeing a lot of exciting research.
I've heard that caffeine can sometimes make anxiety worse,
Yeah.
but I've also heard that it can boost your mood.
Yeah.
What's the real story?
It's true. Caffeine can be a double-edged sword.
Okay.
So for some people, it can act as an antidepressant and have positive neurological effects,
Okay.
increasing alertness, improving attention, and even reducing anxiety.
Mhm.
It can definitely give you a mood boost.
Right.
But for people who are sensitive to caffeine, it can actually worsen anxiety, restlessness, and insomnia.
So it's about knowing your body
Absolutely.
and how you react.
Yeah.
You mentioned some studies on coffee and mood, though. What did those find?
So here's a surprising finding. Studies have shown that moderate caffeine intake, less than 6 cups of coffee a day, is associated with a lower risk of depression and suicide.
Lower risk of depression and suicide. Wow. It's pretty
Oh.
amazing. What kind of studies are we talking about here?
So one massive study with over 260,000 participants found that those who drank 4 or more cups of coffee a day were nearly 10% less likely to experience depression compared to non-drinkers.
That's a big difference. Are there any other studies that we can look to that support those findings?
Yeah, another meta-analysis this time of over 330,000 people
Okay.
found a 24% reduced risk of depression in those with the highest coffee intake, about 4.5 cups a day compared to those who drank less than 1 cup.
Okay.
And they also observed an 8% decrease in risk for every additional cup of coffee that was consumed.
Wow. It's fascinating that we're seeing such consistent findings across all of these different studies.
Mm-hmm.
Coffee really does seem to be a friend to our mental well-being.
Yeah.
What about more serious neurological conditions,
Parkinson's.
like Parkinson's disease?
So that's another area where the research is really promising.
Okay.
Parkinson's disease is caused by a loss of dopamine-producing cells in the brain. And research has shown that people who consume higher amounts of caffeine actually have a lower risk of developing Parkinson's.
Interesting. So caffeine might be protecting those dopamine-producing brain cells?
That's what the research suggests.
Okay.
Both animal and cell studies have demonstrated this protective effect. And one systematic review of 26 studies found a 25% lower risk of Parkinson's with higher caffeine intake,
Wow.
and a 24% risk reduction for every 300 milligram increase in caffeine.
So coffee might actually be a secret weapon in the fight against Parkinson's.
It's possible.
Wow. That's pretty incredible. Are there any specific studies in that area that stand out?
Yeah, there's this really interesting Finnish cohort study
Okay.
that followed people for over 22 years.
Wow.
And they found that those who drank at least 10 cups a day had a significantly lower risk of Parkinson's compared to non-drinkers.
10 cups a day. That's serious coffee drinking.
Wow.
And then another large study found a 58% lower risk of Parkinson's in men who drank at least 6 cups a day compared to those who didn't drink coffee.
Okay, so we're really seeing this protective effect coming through in the research. That's really promising. What about Alzheimer's disease?
Wow.
Has there been any research on coffee and its impact there?
So there have been some studies, but the research on coffee and Alzheimer's is a bit less conclusive than for Parkinson's.
That makes sense. Alzheimer's is such a complex disease.
It is.
I imagine the research is still really evolving.
Yeah.
What have studies shown so far?
One study called the U8 study
Okay.
found that drinking 3 to 5 cups of coffee a day in midlife
Mm-hmm.
was linked to a significantly reduced risk of developing Alzheimer's later in life.
That's encouraging. But you said the research is less conclusive.
Yeah.
Why is that?
So 3 other systematic reviews haven't actually found a clear link between coffee consumption and Alzheimer's risk.
Oh, okay.
So the research is still limited in this area.
All right. And the study designs vary, so it makes it harder to draw definitive conclusions.
Right. So the jury's still out on coffee and Alzheimer's.
Yeah, for sure.
More research is needed to give us a clearer picture,
Mm-hmm.
but it sounds like there's at least a possibility that coffee could offer some protection.
Absolutely. While caffeine might play a role in protecting against dementia and Alzheimer's,
Right.
we need those larger long-term studies to say for sure.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground today,
We have.
from cancer to diabetes to heart health
Yeah.
to even neurodegenerative diseases like Parkinson's and Alzheimer's.
Right.
It seems like coffee has a hand in just about everything.
It really does.
It's amazing how much research has been done
It's remarkable.
on this one beverage.
Coffee is so much more complex than we might have thought.
Yeah.
It's a rich source of antioxidants and other beneficial compounds that can impact our physical and mental well-being.
So let's recap for our listeners. A moderate amount of coffee, somewhere between 3 to 5 cups a day, is likely not harmful and could even be linked to a wide range of health benefits.
Right.
And that cancer scare from years ago seems to be completely unfounded.
It seems that way.
In fact, coffee might even help to protect against certain types of cancer.
Potentially.
That's great news.
Yeah.
But it's important to remember that everyone is different.
Absolutely. Individual tolerance to caffeine varies.
Right.
And what works for one person might not work for another.
Exactly. So it's always best to listen to your body
Yeah.
and find what feels right for you. And if you are someone who can't handle caffeine, it sounds like decaf coffee is a great alternative.
Absolutely. Decaf coffee seems to offer many of the same health benefits as regular coffee without those caffeine jitters.
So there you have it, coffee.
Yeah.
Not just a delicious drink, but maybe a health elixir.
It really is fascinating.
Who knew?
We've learned that coffee is this really complex beverage with a complex impact on our health.
The research is always evolving.
Right.
But one thing is clear, coffee is much more than just a quick pick-me-up.
That's for sure.
All right.
And on that note, we want to leave our listener with a thought-provoking question.
Okay.
Knowing what you now know about the potential upsides and downsides of coffee,
Right.
how will this information change your coffee habits?
Right.
Will you be reaching for an extra cup, switching to decaf, or simply savoring each sip with a newfound appreciation for those potential health benefits?
For sure.
It's up to you to decide what works best.
Right.
But we hope this deep dive has given you a better understanding of the science behind coffee.
It's up to you to decide what works best, but we hope this deep dive has given you a better understanding of the science behind coffee and empowered you to make more informed choices about your coffee consumption.